ready to go. Hold on a second. Okay, well, it's in the wrong camera. Looks like we have a lot of glitches tonight. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to have to end before 6 o'clock because I have a conference call at 6, so it'll be a little shorter tonight. So hopefully you'll all excuse me. So, start chanting. Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvadikacharya also Tara Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Sabaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Friends say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shishi Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Maturam Ki Jai Jagannath Goswami Ki Jai Manamai Ki Jai Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Dejatarni. So Om Gana Tinadandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chapshudan Niditam Yena Tasmai Shigarve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, before we read Nectar Devotion, we read this stanza from the Goswami Ashtaka, written by Srinivasa Acharya. Nana Shastra Vicharanaya Nibano Sadhama Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarano Sri Bhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radhakrishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Makto Liko Mande Rupat Zanaktano Ragu Yago Shri Jiva Gopala Ko. So I offer my respectful obeisances under the six Goswamis, namely Shri Sanatana Goswami, Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Oh, I think I have to mute you all. Hold on a second. Okay, that's good. Okay, so we're going to continue with our study of the Nectar of Devotion. We're in chapter 19 right now. And as I mentioned, we're going to be ending a little sooner tonight because I have a conference call at 6 o'clock p.m. my time. So let us share the screen and start without further ado. And today, chapter 19 is entitled Devotional Service in Pure Love of God. Okay. When one's desire to love Krishna in one's particular relationship becomes intensified, this is known as pure love of Godhead. In the beginning, a devotee is engaged in the regulative principles of devotional service by the spiritual master, by the order of the spiritual master. When one thereby becomes completely purified of all material contamination, there develops an attachment and taste for devotional service. This taste and attachment, when gradually intensified in the course of time, becomes love. The word love can be applied actually only in relationship with the personality of Godhead. It's interesting. So love, of course, means the desire to please someone without any question or desire to please oneself. So here, Rupa Goswami is actually mentioning the progressive path of devotional service that we've mentioned many times. Ado Shraddha, in the beginning, there's a little bit of faith, and one associates with the devotees. Then one begins to perform devotional activities in the practice stage. And as one's performing devotional activity in the practice stage, then there's anartha nivritti, you get rid of unwanted things. And when you get rid of unwanted things, you actually become steady, and then you have a taste, attachment, and then the ecstasies, which were described in the previous chapter. And then finally, you get pure love of God. Okay. In the material world, love is not applicable at all. Sorry to disturb any of you. What goes on under the name of love in the material world is nothing but lust.
In the trees.
Hold on a second. Mute you all again. This feature is not working. I'm muting you all. Okay. Hopefully you're all muted. There's a gulf of difference between love and lust, like the difference between gold and iron. In the Narada Pancharatra, it is clearly stated that when lust is completely transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the concept of kinship is completely reposed in him, such is accepted as pure love of God by great authorities like Bhishma, Prahlad, Uddhava, and Narada. Great authorities like Bhishma have explained that love of Godhead means completely giving up all so-called love for any other person. I have to explain this one in a second. According to Bhishma, love means reposing one's affection completely upon one person, withdrawing all affinities for any other person. This pure love can be transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead under two conditions: out of ecstasy and out of the causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Let me explain that. It appears to be a little heartless. So it says, giving up all so-called love for any other person. Well, it actually means loving every other person, because you see every other person in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the Upanishad states, Yastu sarvani bhutani atman evana pashti sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tato no vigupshate. That one sees everyone in relationship with Krishna. So once one sees that relationship, then the love is there, complete love for everybody. So just like watering the root of the tree, another example Srila Prabhupada gave in the Vedas gave, that if you water the root of the tree, all the leaves get watered. So if you love Krishna, then you're loving everybody. You're not avoiding anybody because you understand the relationship. Let me give you an example. Let's say let's say you meet someone, okay, and just a stranger, some guy or something like that. And then your mother says, actually, this is your brother. And then all of a sudden, there's a great deal of affection and love for the person, even though previously he's just a run-of-the-mill other guy who cares about you. But when you understand the relationship, sambandha, first stage in understanding Krishna consciousness, remember, sambandha videya prayojana. When you understand the relationship, then the affection naturally comes. So it doesn't mean that you don't love anyone. It means you love others completely because you want the best thing for them, which is engaging them in Krishna's service. Otherwise, it would appear that one would become like a sociopath. Ecstasy, ecstatic love of Godhead, can be potently invoked simply by following the rules and regulations of devotional service as they are prescribed in the scriptures under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. In the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, verse 40 of Srimad Bhagavatam, this ecstatic love born of the execution of regulative devotional service is explained. A devotee in the course of executing the regulative principles of devotional service develops his natural Krishna consciousness, and being thus softened at heart, he chants and dances like a madman. While performing chanting of the holy name of the Lord, he sometimes cries, sometimes talks wildly, sometimes sings, and sometimes, without caring for any outsider, dances like a madman. That's actually twice in this paragraph. Dances like a madman and also dances like a madman. There's two of those quotes there. So that's love of God. But it's not simply executing the regulated principles of devotional service, but regulated principles of devotional service, and in this way associating with the devotee, with the pure devotee while you're doing it. In the Padma Purana, there's a statement about ecstatic love born of spontaneous affection. Chandrakanti, a celebrated fair-faced girl, rigidly observed celibacy in order to obtain Krishna as her husband. She always engaged herself in meditating on the transcendental form of the Lord and always chanted the glories of the Lord. She did not desire to accept anyone else as her husband. She had firmly decided that only Lord Krishna would be her husband. That's extraordinary. The Lord's extraordinary mercy. When a devotee is found to be always associated with the Lord in ecstatic love, it is to be understood that such a position has been awarded by the Lord himself out of his causeless extraordinary mercy. An example of such extraordinary mercy is given in the 11th canto, 12th chapter, verse 7 of Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein Lord Krishna tells Uddhava, the gopis in Vrindavan did not study the Vedas to achieve me, nor had they ever been in holy places of pilgrimage, nor do they devoutly execute any regulative principle, nor do they undergo any kind of austerity. It is simply by my association that they have attained the highest perfection of devotional service. From the example of Chandrakanti, as found in the Padma Purana, and from the example of the gopis as found in Srimad Bhagavatam, it appears that a devotee who always thinks of Krishna and who always chants his glories in ecstatic love, regardless of his condition, will attain the highest perfection of unalloyed devotional love due to the Lord's extraordinary mercy. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. If a person worships, adores, and loves Hari, the Supreme Lord, he should be understood to have finished all kinds of austerities, penances, and similar processes for self-realization. On the other hand, if undergoing all types of austerities, penances, and mystic yoga practices, one does not develop such love for Hari, then all his performances are to be considered a useless waste of time. Dharma 20. That means even if one does all these austerities, penances, and everything like that, if he doesn't develop attraction for Krishna, then it's simply spinning his wheels, a waste of time. If someone always sees Krishna inside and out, then it is to be understood that he has surpassed all austerities and penances for self-realization. And if, after executing all kinds of penances and austerities, one cannot always see Krishna inside and out, then he has executed his performances uselessly. Spontaneous attraction to Krishna, which is said to be due to the extraordinary mercy of the Lord, can be placed under two headings. One is profound veneration for the greatness of the Lord, and the other is one's being automatically attracted to Krishna without any extraneous consideration. Let me explain that. Like the gopis of Vrindavan, they don't care whether Krishna is God or Krishna is not God. It doesn't affect them in the least. They just want to be with Krishna and please Krishna. That's automatic attraction to Krishna without any extraneous consideration. And those in the Vaikuntha planets, they worship Krishna as God. Like in Christian literature, we find, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Give us this day our daily bread." In the Narada Pancharatra, it is said that if on account of profound veneration for the greatness of the Supreme Lord, one attains a great affection and steady love for him, one is certainly assured of attaining the four kinds of Vaishnava liberation. Remember, we talked about this before? There's actually 5 types of liberation. One type is not Vaishnava liberation. One type that's not Vaishnava liberation is to merge into the existence of the Lord. Sayuja Mukti. The other types are liberation or types of liberation the Vaishnavas would accept, namely achieving the same bodily features as the Lord, Sarupya, achieving the same opulence as the Lord, Sarsti, dwelling on the planet where the Lord is residing, Salokya, and attaining eternal association with the Lord, Samipya. Anyway, don't have to remember these Sanskrit terms. The Vaishnava liberation is completely different from the Mayavad liberation, which is simply a matter of being merged into the effulgence of the Lord. Now, remember what we described earlier in the Nectar devotion study? That the devotee doesn't aspire for any of the types of liberation, not even the Vaishnava liberation types. He's simply interested in serving Krishna. Mama janmani janmani shure bhavatad bhakti hoitu toye. Life after life, he simply wants to be engaged in pure devotional service. And we also described that for the immature devotee, it's good to be attracted and to want one of those 4 types of Vaishnava liberation. Why? Because that person is not on the platform of serving without any motivation. So there's some motivation there. But when all the motivation goes away at the stage of pure devotional service, one simply wants to please the Lord as described by Lord Shiva when he was talking about Chitraketu. Chitraketu, great devotee, pure devotee, was cursed to become a demon, and he didn't mind because he was a Krishna conscious demon. So Lord Shiva said, Narayana Paraksarve Nakutaschina Vidyati Swarga Pavarga Narakeshu Apituliyartha Darshana, that a topmost devotee of Krishna, or Narayan, He doesn't care if he goes to heaven or hell or gets liberated. Because wherever he is going, he's doing the same thing, trying to please Krishna. So it's that bhakti ras that he's experiencing. This is the really important. Bhakti ras means simply the ras, or the taste of giving pleasure to one's beloved in any situation. Like the gopis said, this is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, speaking through the mouth of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that if our unhappiness or my unhappiness gives Krishna happiness, then my unhappiness is my happiness. But that's a very high stage. Don't imitate it. Don't imitate it. Don't think you're at that stage until you're actually at that stage. How do you know you're at that stage? Well, Krishna will have come to you. He will have shaken your hand, or nowadays with the coronavirus, of course, he'll probably do a fist bump with you because he wants to protect you. I'm just joking about that, of course. And then Narada Pancharatra, pure unalloyed devotional service, is explained as being without any motive or personal benefit. If a devotee is continuously in love with Lord Krishna and his mind is always fixed upon him, that devotional attitude will prove to be the only means of attracting the attention of the Lord. In other words, a Vaishnava who is incessantly thinking of the form of Lord Krishna is to be known as a pure Vaishnava. Of course, also, in addition to incessantly thinking of the form of Lord Krishna, a Vaishnava is one who's always thinking how to please Krishna, not simply just thinking of the form of Krishna. Because if he's just thinking of the form of Krishna, not thinking how to please Krishna, that's just Shanta Ras. He should be thinking, how can I please Krishna, even in the, whether he's in the Dasha Ras, whether he's in the Sakya Ras, the Vatsalya Ras, or Madhurya Ras, that is, whether the servitude relationship, or he's in the friendship relationship, parental relationship, or the conjugal relationship. Generally, a devotee who has achieved the causeless mercy of the Lord on account of following the strict rules and regulations of devotional service becomes attracted by the supreme greatness of the Lord. So what's being described here is a devotee who got Krishna's mercy following simply Vaidhi Bhakti. Remember we talked about this before? Vaidhi Bhakti means the rules and regulations. And the higher stage, of course, is Raganuga Bhakti, whereas one still follows the rules and regulations, but one is not following the rules and regulations for the rules and regulations' sake. One is following just because that's spontaneous life. One's getting up for Mangalarti because one loves it, not because the alarm clock went off or he won't get prasadam and the temple president is going to yell at him for not coming to Mangalarti. He gets up because, it's Mangalarti. So anyway, so that's those who simply remain on rules and regulations basis, ritualistic rule and regulation basis. Yes, got to get up. Okay. Got to chant my rounds. Okay. Got to eat prasadam. Okay. Then they go to Vaikuntha because they're attracted by the supreme greatness of the Lord. Whereas those who are in Vrindavan are attracted simply by Krishna. Whether Krishna, they don't care if Krishna's God or not. Doesn't even cross their minds. By the transcendental beauty of the Lord and by the spontaneous execution of devotional service. To be more clear, by executing the regulated principle of devotion, one can fully appreciate the transcendental beauty of the Lord. In any case, such exalted positions are possible only by the extraordinary mercy of the Lord upon the devotee. Here we go. Association with pure devotees. Although many different processes for developing love of God have been explained so far, Srila Rupa Goswami now gives us a general description of how one can best achieve such a high position. The beginning of ecstatic love of Godhead is basically faith. There are many societies and associations of pure devotees, and if someone with just a little faith begins to associate with such societies, his advancement in pure devotional service is rapid. Now, you're probably going to recognize the description of the different levels of spiritual advancement, which we've mentioned many times before. Well, I just mentioned a few minutes ago, in fact. I just said in the beginning there's faith, then one associates with the devotees. Now here, the next one is the bhajana kriya. The influence of a pure devotee is such that if someone comes to associate with him with a little faith, one gets the chance of hearing about the Lord from the authoritative scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, that's Bhajana Kriya. Thus, and then, by the mercy of the Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart, one gradually develops his faith in the descriptions of such authoritative scriptures. This is the first stage of association with pure devotees. In the second stage, after one becomes a little advanced and mature, he automatically offers to follow the principles of devotional service and the guidance of the pure devotee and accepts him as the spiritual master. Wait a second. In the next stage, under the guidance of the spiritual master, the devotee executes regulative devotional service. That's called Bhajana Kriya again. And as a result of such activities, he becomes freed from all unwanted occupations. Remember what that is? Anartha nivritti. Unwanted things like lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, etc. When he is freed from unwanted occupations, his faith becomes steadily fixed. That's called nishta. And then after nishta, and he develops a transcendental taste for devotional service. That's called ruchi. And then attachment. That's called ashakti. And then ecstasies. Remember what I said? Ecstasies are called bhavas. And in the last stage, there's pure love of Godhead, and that is called prema. These are different stages of the development of pure love. And of course, Krishnadas Kaviraj speaks about that, Lord Chaitanya speaks about that, giving this whole progressive path. Shradadata, Sadhusangota, Bhajana, Narti Nivritti Shat. Then after that, you get Nishta, and then Ruchi, Shakti, and then Bhava, and then Prema. Sorry. Anyway, so this is the progressive path, which we've mentioned many times before, and here Rupa Goswami is simply reiterating that progressive path. Only the most fortunate persons can achieve such success in life. Those who are simply academic students of Vedic scriptures cannot appreciate how such a development takes place. In the Narada Pancharatra, Lord Shiva therefore tells Parvati, "My dear supreme goddess, you may know from me that any person who has developed the ecstasy of love of God, or love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who is always merged in transcendental bliss on account of this love, cannot even perceive the material distress or happiness coming from the body or mind." So that's a symptom of achieving pure love of God, that you don't even perceive material distress or happiness. The affection and dealings of love that are different branches of the original tree of love precede many varieties of affectionate manifestations that will not be discussed here. They're discussed later in Nectar Devotion. These different manifestations have been described by Sanatana Goswami in his Bhagavatamrita. It's actually the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Although the subject of such affections and dealings of love is very confidential, Sanatana Goswami has described them very explicitly. Srila Rupa Goswami thus concludes the first division of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Wow. Offering up his treatise for the transcendental pleasure of Sanatana Goswami, who has established the transcendental beauty, and of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami. It appears from this statement that the great Srila Jiva Goswami was not yet active when Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was written. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta summary of the first division of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu up to the descriptions of ecstatic love of Godhead, which are to follow next. Wow. We've made a lot of progress. Actually, we should all be advanced, at least at the Bhava platform, by this particular point. So that was chapter 19, and we can start chapter 20. We're so fortunate. Okay. Chapter 20, Transcendental Mellow. In the second division of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the author offers his respectful obeisances unto Sanatana, This Sanatan can be interpreted as either Sri Krishna himself or Sanatan Goswami, the elder brother and spiritual master of Rupa Goswami. In the case where Sanatan is accepted to mean Sri Krishna, the obeisances are offered to Krishna because he is naturally so beautiful and because he is the killer of a demon, Ogar. That was a big snake demon that Krishna entered into the mouth of, and he expanded himself and choked this nice demon to death. If it is interpreted to mean Sanatan Goswami, then it is because he is so greatly favored by Rupa Goswami, being always served by him, and because he is the annihilator of all kinds of sinful activities. In this division of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the author wants to describe the general symptoms of the transcendental mellow, loving mood of discharging devotional service. Now, these are the bhavas which we talked about before, and we actually went into a little bit of depth in describing. In this division of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there are 5 general topics. 1, vibhava, special symptoms or causes of ecstasy. In other words, that which stimulates your ecstasy. Anubhava, subsequent ecstasy. In other words, the ecstasy that you experience upon being stimulated. Then sattvika bhava, constitutional existential ecstasy. That there's 8 of those ecstasies. That or those ecstasies which you experience as part of your constitution because you're situated in Vishuddha Sattva, whether purified mode of goodness. 4, vyabhichari bhava, aggressive ecstasy, which means ecstasies that are intermittent, that just take over you, and you don't know when they're coming, and you try to hold them back, but you can't hold them back. And finally, sthai bhava, fervent or continuous ecstasy, and that's in relationship to one's particular relationship with the Lord. Let's say, sthai bhava, my emotion is that of a coward boy. My emotion is that of a gopi. My emotion is that of a parent of Krishna. My emotion is that one of those, or as a servant of Krishna. That's the sthai bhava, the continuous mood of ecstasy. Okay. The word rasa used in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is understood by different persons differently because the exact English equivalent is very difficult to find. But as we have seen our spiritual master translate this word, rasa, into mellow, we shall follow in his footsteps and also translate the word in that way. So mellow means like the taste that one gets, for example. Like what's the mellow or taste that one gets when one eats chili peppers? No one knows, of course. Hot. When one eats a lemon, sour. So that's a mellow, okay? But those are taste in terms of the tongue. But now we're talking about taste in terms of one's heart. The particular loving mood or attitude, relish, and exchange of love with the Supreme Personality of God is called rasa or mellow. The different types of ras, when combined together, help one taste the mellow of devotional service in the highest degree of transcendental ecstasy. Such a position, although entirely transcendental to our experience, will be explained in this section as far as possible, following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. Without relishing some sort of mellow or loving mood in one's activities, no one can continue to perform such activities. That also applies in the material world. What's the mellow you get from jumping, not exactly loving, but jumping from an airplane? Rush, enthusiasm, whatever. I've never jumped from an airplane. That's why people like it, going on a roller coaster. Similarly, in the transcendental life of Krishna consciousness and devotional service, there must be some mellow or specific taste from the service. Generally, this mellow is experienced by chanting, hearing, worshiping in the temple, and being engaged in the service of the Lord. One experiences a particular type of taste. When a person feels transcendental bliss, that is called relishing the mellow. To be more clear, we may understand that the various feelings of happiness derived from discharging devotional service may be termed the mellow of devotional service. This relishing of transcendental mellow in discharging devotional service cannot be experienced by all classes of men because this sweet, loving mood is developed only from one's previous life's activities or by the association of unalloyed devotees. That's good. means we can give it to anyone by bringing them to Srila Prabhupada. As explained above, association with pure devotees is the beginning of faith and devotional service. Only by developing such faith in the association of a pure devotee or by having in one's previous life executed devotional activities can one actually relish the mellow of devotional service. In other words, this transcendental bliss is not to be enjoyed by any common man unless he is so extraordinarily fortunate as to be in association with devotees or to be continuing his previous birth's devotional activities. The gradual process of development to the stage of devotional service is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. The beginning is to hear about Lord Krishna and the association of devotees who have themselves cleansed their hearts by by hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord. Hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord will result in one's feeling transcendental bliss always. It is also explained in Bhagavad Gita that for one who has actually come to the spiritual platform, the first symptom visible will be that he is always joyful. What is that verse? Brahma Bhuta, Prasanatma, Nachochati Nakankshanti. That means one who is on the spiritual platform is always joyful and he never hankers or laments for anything material. This joyous life is attained by one's reaction to reading Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, or else from associating with persons who are very interested in the spiritual life of Krishna consciousness, specifically those who have made the determination to achieve the favor of Govinda by being engaged in transcendental loving service at his lotus feet. Being encouraged by such feeling, one who is constantly engaged in discharging the regulative principles of devotional service in such a way as to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead develops two principles of compelling force which come under the heading of vibhava. Thus one enjoys transcendental bliss. So here we're going to talk about the two types of stimulation. Remember we talked about vibhava means, it's really important that I explain all this to you. Vibhava means that which stimulates your other emotions. And there's two types, alambana and udipana. These two words are not used here in Prabhupada's translation. Alambana means directly Krishna. Udipana means things related with Krishna or things connected to Krishna. Okay, here we go. There are several origins or causes for this compulsive, right, to be compulsive, obsessive, compulsive love of Krishna, such as Krishna himself, the devotees of Krishna, and Krishna playing on the flute. The effect is sometimes loving and sometimes stunted. So here we find, let me just unpack this. Krishna himself, that's Alambana, the devotees of Krishna, Udipana. Krishna is playing on the flute, it's both of them because you got the flute and you got Krishna. You see Krishna and you see the flute, Alambana and Udipana, and you experience great love, and one of the symptoms, you become stunned. So next, we're going to describe 8 transcendental symptoms. There are 8 transcendental symptoms found in the body during ecstasy, and all of them are possible only by a mixture of the above. The above mentioned 5 ecstatic divisions. Without some mixture of these 5 ecstatic principles, what were the 5 ecstatic principles? Vibhav, the Anubhav, the Satvika Bhav, the Vyabhichari Bhav, and the Sthai Bhav. Okay. One cannot relish transcendental bliss. The cause of basis for relishing transcendental mellow is exactly what we mean by vibhav. This vibhav is divided into 2, namely basic and impelling. So that's the same thing we just talked about. Krishna and things related to Krishna, or impetus giving. In the Agni Purana, the description of vibhava is given as follows. The basis from which ecstatic love is born is called vibhava, which is divided into 2, basic and impelling. In other words, there are 2 kinds of ecstatic love. The object of basic ecstatic love is Krishna and his devotee. Lord Krishna is the object of basic ecstatic love, and his pure devotee reservoir such as the object of impelling ecstatic love. Impelling ecstatic love, then is that love which develops when one sees an object which reminds him of Krishna, which is exactly what we just said. Remember? Alambana and Udipana. Alambana is Krishna. Udipana is things which remind you of Krishna. Peacock feather, a devotee, a cow. I'll give you another example. One time I was at Govardhan and I heard a flute and I fell into ecstasy. But then I realized the flute was just coming over the speaker system where I live, and it was just some mundane guy playing the flute. Then the ecstasy stopped. Anyway, it's called Udipana. Lord Krishna, it was the possessor of inconceivable potencies and qualities of transcendental knowledge and bliss. It's the basic cause of ecstatic love. And Alambana again. Lord Krishna also becomes the reservoir, impetus of ecstatic love by his different incarnations and expansions. Same thing. Impetus, stimulation. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a statement in connection with the Brahma Vimohana Leela. That's where Lord Brahma stole the coward boys and calves, which demonstrates something of this impelling or impetus, giving a feature of ecstatic love. When Brahma was deluded by Krishna, who expanded himself into so many coward boys, calves, and cows, Krishna's elder brother, Shri Baladeva, a direct expansion of Krishna, himself felt astonishment and said, how wonderful it is that my ecstatic love for Krishna is again being attracted to so many coward boys, calves, and cows. He was struck with wonder by thinking in this way. This is one of the examples in which Krishna himself becomes the object and reservoir of ecstatic love in the impelling aspect. So here's the point. So Balaram was looking at the coward boys. The coward boys were actually expansions of Krishna at that particular point. So they both fulfill the category of Alambana and Udipana for Balaram because they were directly Krishna and also indirectly Krishna. Anyway, the coward boys. So that's very important. So we did 19 and 20 today. Wow, we are on a roll. Let's see. I think because I have to end earlier than 6, we're going to stop here and take some questions because these descriptions of the Babas are very important. So I want to see if anyone has any questions about the different Babas, V Baba, Anu Baba, Satvika Baba, Vyavachari Baba, and finally Stai Baba, because these are very important points that are being brought out in this particular verse. And of course, next we're going to get to the qualities of Sri Krishna, which are also stimulations for ecstatic love for Krishna, because this whole portion of the Nectar devotion deals with the bhavas, the emotions. And of course, in the material world, we have something called bhava rog. It means the sick emotions that we have in this world. Rog means sick. Just like Prabhupada said, one could be a bhogi, material sense and gratifier. One could be a yogi. That means someone who's engaged in yoga. Or one could be a rogi. That means one who's sick. So we have this bhava rog right now. And we're not going to talk about that in this particular discussion because we already have experienced it for many, many lifetimes. So let's hear some questions about the bhavas specifically, please. Ask questions about these things. Okay, now you're going to ask questions and make sure I can hear. Anybody have any questions? Okay, speak now, forever hold your peace. Hare Krishna.
Okay, I have a question. There it's mentioned that it's good if we are if you have an association, those who are interested in Krishna consciousness. What does this mean? Like they don't have to be like advanced, or what does this interested mean?
Well, in the beginning, we're interested, ado shraddha. We have that means a little bit of preliminary faith that we're just interested in hearing about Krishna. It sounds interesting, like Krishna says in the Gita, 4 types of people approach him. One type is actually inquisitive. That's the person who's interested. Krishna says 4 types of people approach me: those who are inquisitive, those who are looking for knowledge, those who are in distress, and those who are looking for wealth, money. So someone is just interested, and then he approaches Krishna with a little bit of faith or a little bit of interest, but trust. Faith means trust in this respect. Then one begins to associate with devotees. Does that answer the question?
I thought that it was like that we have to like associate with those.
Oh, associate with those people who are interested in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
Is that the point? Well, that means people whose interest is only in Krishna consciousness. A little bit different. Sometimes you can say, well, I'm interested to hear what you have to say, and that means I'm just inquisitive. In another context, you can say, boy, he's really interested in becoming a pure devotee. And that means that's his dedication. I'm interested. What's that?
It's not necessary that they're like advanced already. It's just that they.
In that particular context, it means someone is advanced because someone is dedicated. Like if someone says, "I'm interested in taking prasadam now," that means they really want to take prasadam. It's a question of using the word "interested" in English in different contexts. It can actually indicate different varieties of concentration or desire. Like I can say, I'm interested in hearing the news to find out who's going to win the election. But it's not really that important. Maybe it is important. Anyway, it's really not that important for me. But or I can say, my interest is in becoming Krishna conscious. In that particular case, that means it's really important. It's a question of using the word interested or interest in English in different contexts. Many words are understood differently, either defined differently or have different emphases, have a different emphasis according to the context in which they're found. So if you're saying you have to associate with those who are interested in Krishna consciousness, that means those who are absorbed in Krishna consciousness. It's a different way of saying that. Good question. So let's say a question about the bhavas. Who's interested in experiencing bhavas? Yes, Mr. Radha Padma. Oh, you were asking a question?
Hare Krishna Gurudev, Dandavat Pranam.
Mr. Radha Padma. Okay, so what's the question?
Gurudev, I mean, you've given examples, but could you still please give examples of each bhava, like vibhava?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay.
And also, if you could describe what does wild talking when they are in ecstasy. When we were reading about dances like a madman, you mentioned that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let me describe it again. I've gone over it before. So vibhava, let's use material examples just so you understand it better. Just like you love your daughter very much. So let's say she's at the university right now. She's gone to Australia to study medicine. This is a real life example. And then all of a sudden you go into her closet and you see her coat she left here. So that's a vibhava, and you start crying. You start crying because you're missing her, and the coat stimulates your emotions towards her. So vibhava, that's a vibhava. Or when she calls you up on the phone from Australia and you see her, that's also vibhava. That's pleasure her. All right, and then okay, and then that's vibhava. And then anubhava means the emotions that follow from that stimulation. let's say you speak to your daughter on the phone, who you love very much, and you and your wife start dancing in ecstasy. You grab each other and just dance. I talk to her, I talk to her, I talk to her, and you're just like rolling on the ground, foaming at the mouth, something like that. Because it's probably not that static, but anyway. And then that's called the anubhava, the emotions that follow, anubhava. You understand?
Yes.
And then after the anubhava, there's the sattvika bhava. It means the emotions that are constantly part of you, that towards your daughter. You have eightfold emotions. I'm not going to get into all the different emotions. And then the vyabhachari bhavas means that things, your ecstatic ecstasy and love for your daughter that you can't control. Let's say you're stimulated one time by hearing that she got straight A's in the university, which would be nice. And then you just like faint, because there's 33 of those like intermittent ecstasies you can't control. And then Radha Padma says, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And you're just like rolling your eyes and like that. That's Vyabhachari Bhava, Sanchari Bhava. And then the Sthai Bhava, that just means she's your daughter. That's the relationship. You understand? The constant relationship, she's your daughter. Does that make sense? Or I can use an example between a young boy and a young girl in love, but I'll probably offend half the people here. I'm not going to do that. I mean, I got enough trouble as it is. But you understand. So anyway, just again, vibhava is something that stimulates your emotion because it reminds you of the person, or it's the person directly. Those are the two branches of vibhava. Anubhava is what you express voluntarily, hearing or being stimulated. Sattvika bhava are the emotions that are, constantly part of your devotion.
Yes, good.
They're the emotions that are just like, they're part of your nature. They're existential.
Yes.
And then Vyabhachari bhava are 30, there's 33 of those. The Sattvika bhavas are 8. The Vyabhachari bhavas are 33, and they're intermittent ecstasies that you can't tell when they're going to come and overwhelm you. Like when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Lord Jagannath for the first time in Jagannath Puri, that was Vyabhachari bhava. It was like he was almost dead. People thought he's dead. He's left his body until Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya put a cotton swab near his nose and then could see that he was still breathing. That's called a Vyabhachari bhava, which are really intense, unexpected, intermittent, and uncontrollable ecstasies. And then you have the Sthai bhava. Sthai bhava means that which is in relationship with your ras with Krishna, which means you're a cowherd boy, you're a parent of Krishna, you're a conjugal lover of Krishna, or you're a servant. That's the constant mood you have to serve Krishna. One of those 4 Vaishnava moods.
Yes.
Good question. So I've gone over it before, and I'm sure I'll have to go over it again for everyone to understand the problem.
Gurudev, does that
what?
That means the one who is dancing like a madman, that's anubhava or vyabhichari bhava?
That's anubhava.
Anubhava. Okay.
That's anubhava because you can control it. I mean, you're dancing, you can control, but it's just like you're so ecstatic. Haribo, Haribo, like that. You're so ecstatic, like you won the lottery.
Yeah.
You win the lottery. Haribo, Haribo, joy. I mean, nobody's forcing you to do that. It's not, the emotion's not forcing you, but you're deciding to express the emotion because you've just been stimulated like that. You understand?
Yes, Gurudev.
So that's that. I think I'm going to have to end because I do have a conference call in 2 minutes. I know I have to end shortly here. So we want to thank you all for joining us. And remember, the celebration is coming up Sunday for those of you who live in North and South America at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, same station. Tuesday for those of you who live in New Zealand, Australia, Fiji, Europe, or India, and it's at different times. Let's say in New Zealand, it's 8 o'clock at night on Tuesday night, and Australia, it's in Sydney area, it's 6 o'clock at night. In Fiji, it's 7 o'clock at night. In Victoria, Australia, it's 6 o'clock at night. And around the Brisbane area, it's 5 o'clock at night. And in India, it's 12:30 midday. And in Europe, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. But that's for those of you. And all of you are invited to attend both celebrations if you want, because actually, if you can be up at that time of the day or morning, like that. Anyway, the question of Mahabhav is an expression of prema. That's something different. That's Jai Radhika just asked that. I have to end now because I have people waiting for me on a conference call. Thank you very much. We'll be filling you all in on the other details of the party in the next few days. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.